What happens when a royal guest walks onto live television thinking they can control the conversation you're about to see? This wasn't just another daytime interview. It became one of the most explosive moments in talk show history. Prince Harry stepped onto the Loose Women's set, expecting a light chat and polite applause. What he got instead was Denise Welch, locked and loaded. Even before the cameras rolled, the air in the ITV studio was heavy. Harry had arrived with his entourage, clearly expecting De Forensith's same velvet glove treatment he'd grown used to. But Loose Women wasn't built on royal protocol. And Denise Welch wasn't in the mood to bow. As the opening credits faded, Harry fiddled with his tie, visibly uneasy. Across the desk, Christine Lampard, Nadia Sawalha, and Kay Adams exchanged subtle looks. They'd seen Denise like this before. When she was in that state, no guest was untouchable. Right then, Denise began, jumping in before the producer's cue had even cleared. We're joined by Prince Harry, here to talk about his latest ventures. Harry, thanks for coming. Harry flashed that polished Windsor Smiley one drilled into him since childhood. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. But Denise leaned forward, narrowing her eyes. The charm wasn't working. Is it though? Because from what I've read, you've had quite a lot to say about the British press, haven't you? The smile faltered. Just slightly. Well, Harry said, carefully measured. I think it's important to have honest conversations about media responsibility and the way stories are framed. Honest conversations, Denise echoed, her tone sharp as glass. Right. So when you say the British media's been unfair, are you including shows like this one? Because, like it or not, we are British media. Christine tried to smooth things over. What Denise means, Harry, is perhaps you could share your perspective, help us understand, but it was too late. Harry had taken the bait. His jaw tightened. There's a difference between responsible journalism, he said, and the tabloid sensationalism that's targeted my family for decades. Denise didn't blink. Tabloid sensationalism. That's quite an accusation. Are you saying anything less than glowing coverage is automatically sensationalism? That's not what I said, Harry shot back, his composure slipping. I think most reasonable people can see the difference between fair reporting and deliberate character assassination. The studio fell silent. The audience could feel the tension thickening. Nadia attempted a laugh. Well, this is a bit spicier than our usual debates about pineapple on pizza. But Denise was circling. Character assassination. That's strong. So when journalists report on your words, your choices, your actions, you're saying they're assassinating your character. Harry's training kicked in, but the cracks showed. I'm saying there's a pattern of negative coverage that goes beyond legitimate criticism. A pattern, Denise repeated slowly, like a barrister smelling blood. And who decides what's legitimate criticism is? Or just you? Harry shifted in his chair, visibly uncomfortable now. The polished facade was slipping. I think anyone with common sense can make that distinction, he muttered. Common sense, Denise shot back, smiling coldly. So your common sense tells you that criticism of your choices is unfair, but our common sense should tell us you're always in the right. Is that how it works? Kay tried to intervene, desperate to change the tone. Harry, maybe we could highlight some of the positive projects you're doing. I know our viewers would love to hear about your charitable work, but Harry had already crossed the line. His voice hardened. I came here expecting a professional interview, not an ambush. The word hit the table like a hammer. Ambush. Denise's eyebrows shot skyward. An ambush. She repeated, her voice rising. Harry, you're on a talk show. We ask questions. That's literally what we do. Did nobody explain the format to you? The condescension dripped like acid. Harry flushed red. I understand the format perfectly well. What I don't understand is this. Hostile line of questioning. Asterisk, I don't think anyone's being hostile. Harry, Christine cut in gently, her voice carrying the weight of peacemaker. Denise is just asking the kind of questions viewers at home want answers to. But Harry wasn't buying it. His tone sharpened, clipped, and imperious. These aren't questions. They're accusations disguised as journalism. Denise let out a laugh, short, sharp, and utterly humorless. Accusations. Harry, I've asked you 3 questions, all about things you yourself have said. If that feels like an attack, maybe the problem isn't the questions. The panelists' heads turned like spectators at Wimbledon, eyes bouncing between Harry and Denise. The studio audience, once politely attentive, was now hooked every seat, leaning forward. Harry sat taller, his voice cool and entitled. I think the viewers can see exactly what's happening here. This is the same media behavior I've been warning about. Oh, is it now? Denise folded her arms, leaning back with the confidence of someone about to strike. So let me get this straight. When you go on international television and make sweeping allegations about your family, this country, our institutions, that's you speaking your truth. But when someone asks you to explain those allegations, suddenly it's media behavior. That's completely different, Harry snapped, his composure hanging by a thread. Different how? Denise pressed. Because you're the one holding the microphone. Because you get to control the narrative when you're the guest, but the second you're challenged, you don't like it? Nadia jumped in, desperate to diffuse. Maybe we're getting a little off track. Harry, why don't you tell us about the positive changes you're working toward? But Harry's face was flushed, his jaw clenched in that stubborn line viewers had seen in other uncomfortable interviews. I don't think I should have to defend speaking my truth to people who've already made up their minds. The phrase my truth hung in the air like blood in the water. Denise pounced. Your truth. That's an interesting phrase. What about the truth? You know the facts. The ones everyone can agree on. Harry's voice rose, frustration creeping. Through the facts are that my family and I have endured years of invasive, malicious, and inaccurate coverage. Invasive coverage of public figures performing public duties with public money. Denise shot back instantly. Imagine the audacity. Journalists reporting on what you do in public. Christine now looked genuinely uneasy. Maybe we should, but the train was already out of the station, and it was barreling downhill. Harry's voice went cold, his words clipped. I came here in good faith to have a civilized discussion. And that's exactly what you're having, Denise replied smoothly, never breaking eye contact. I'm asking direct questions about your public statements. If that feels uncivilized, maybe the issue isn't with the questions. The issue, Harry said, his voice tight with barely contained anger, is that you're not listening. You're fishing for gotcha moments. Denise's smile was razor sharp. No, Harry, I'm listening very carefully. And what I'm hearing is that when you speak, it should be accepted without question. But when others speak about you, it's unfair. Do I have that right? That's not what I'm saying at all, Harry protested. But the conviction wasn't there. Then what are you saying? Denise pushed, her words cutting like cross-examination. Because from here, it sounds a lot like you want the right to criticize everyone else, but get defensive the second anyone asks you to back it up. Kay, her voice thin with tension, made one last bid for calm. Perhaps there's a misunderstanding here. There's no misunderstanding, Harry. Cut in, his voice firm, almost icy. What there is a perfect example of the hostile media environment I've been describing. And there it was, the soundbite that would be clipped, replayed, and memed endlessly. Denise blinked, then let out a low chuckle of disbelief. Hostile environment? Harry, you're sitting in a cushioned chair on a daytime talk show being asked about your own words. If this is hostile, what do you call actual hardship? Harry's voice rose, sharp now, the mask fully gone. I call this exactly what it is: media manipulation. The same manipulation that drives people out of public life. Media manipulation. Denise's voice spiked, incredulous. I've asked you to explain your own statements, and that's manipulation. The other panelists squirmed. Christine shuffled her notes. Nadia avoided eye contact. Kay glanced desperately toward the control booth, silently praying for someone to cut to a break. But no break was coming. Harry had crossed a line, and Denise wasn't about to let him retreat behind royal protocol. You know what, Harry? She said, her voice cutting clean through the silence. I think our viewers are smart enough to see exactly what's happening here. You came on this show expecting deference off-towel questions, special treatment because of who you are. That's absolutely not true, Harry protested. But the denial rang hollow, isn't it? Denise shot back. Cuz the second. Someone treats you like any other guest, asks the questions we'd ask any public figure. Suddenly, it's an ambush and a hostile environment. That was when Harry snapped. His voice rose, sharp and defensive. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who clearly has an agenda. The studio froze. The cameras might as well have stopped breathing. An agenda. Denise's voice dropped to a dangerously quiet register. What agenda would that be, Harry? His face was red, his jaw locked. He doubled down. The agenda of making me look bad to boost your ratings. The accusation hung heavy in the air. For a long beat, Denise just stared at him. Then, with ice in her tone, she answered, Making you look bad? I haven't made you do a thing. I've asked questions, your questions, about your own words. If that makes you look bad, maybe the problem isn't with the questions. The silence that followed was electric, like the whole room had inhaled at once and forgotten to exhale. Denise leaned forward. Her eyes locked on his. So, let me get this straight. I've ambushed you. I've created a hostile environment. And now, apparently, I'm running some vendetta for ratings. That's what you're saying? Harry hesitated, but pride got the better of him. I think it's clear what this is. This isn't journalism. It's entertainment at my expense. That was it. Denise's patience snapped. Her voice sliced through the studio like a blade. Entertainment at your expense. You came here. Voluntarily, Harry. Nobody forced you to sit in that chair. Nobody forced you to make the public statements I've asked you about. And nobody is forcing you to sit there throwing a tantrum because someone dared to ask a follow-up question. The other panelists shifted uncomfortably. Christine stared at the production booth, silently begging for a commercial. But the producers weren't cutting. This was too good. Harry's face turned a deeper shade of crimson. Spoiled child. How dare you speak to me like that? And there it was. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. The entitled anger that had simmered beneath the surface boiled over in full view of millions. Denise's smile was arctic. How dare I? Harry, you're on my show, accusing me of having an agenda, dismissing legitimate questions as an ambush, and now you want to dictate how I'm allowed to speak to you? Who exactly do you think you are? I know exactly who I am. Harry shot back, his voice cracking into a near shout, far too harsh for daytime television. And I know I don't have to tolerate this kind of treatment from anyone. The studio audience was riveted. This wasn't an awkward interview anymore. It was a live implosion. Perhaps we should take a moment to cool down, Christine suggested, trying to steady the room. But Harry was far past cooling down. He leaned forward, his jaw tight, his voice sharp with indignation. Calm down. I am calm. What I am. He jabbed a finger toward The panel is disgusted by this ambush. You're calling an interview. This isn't journalism, it's a trap. Denise had heard enough. When she spoke, her voice was steady, deliberate, final. All right, Harry, let's be clear. You've called this an ambush. You've accused me of pushing an agenda. You've implied I'm using you for ratings. And now you're lecturing me about journalism while refusing to answer for your own words. That isn't how this works. I am not throwing a tantrum. Harry shot back, though the crack in his voice betrayed him. Denise didn't flinch. Aren't you? Because from here, it looks like you came expecting royal treatment. And now you're unraveling because you were treated like any other guest. The words stung. Harry shoved back his chair, the scrape against the floor cutting through the tense silence. I don't have to sit here and take this. It was meant as a power move, a show of authority. But instead of commanding the room, it only underscored Denise's point. She didn't blink. No, you don't. The door's right there. For a moment, Harry faltered, clearly expecting apologies, please, some desperate attempt to keep him seated. Instead, he was being invited to leave. This is the kind of media treatment that destroys people, he said, though his conviction was already faltering. What destroys people, Denise replied evenly, is believing your title shields you from the same questions the rest of us have to answer. Christine tried one last lifeline. Harry, please, sit back down. We can reset. But Harry's pride wouldn't allow retreat. Reset? After being insulted on live television? After this character assassination? His voice pitched higher, verging on a shout. K. Adams, silent until now, interjected carefully. Harry, I think you might be overreacting. Overreacting. His voice cracked again, louder this time. I'm being humiliated on live television and you call that overreacting. That was the breaking point. Denise leaned forward, her voice cutting through his fury like a blade. Enough. This interview is over. The studio froze. Harry stared at her, stunned. You're throwing me off the show. His voice was smaller now, uncertain, the authority stripped away. I'm ending an interview, Denise corrected, her tone unyielding. Because the moment you decided answering questions was beneath you, it stopped being an interview at all. Harry's eyes flicked around the studio, searching for rescue, for someone to step in. To remind Denise she couldn't possibly expel a prince on live TV, but no one moved. The panelists avoided his gaze. The crew stayed silent. This will be everywhere tomorrow, he warned, making one last desperate reach for control. Denise smiled thinly. Yes, it will. And the world will see exactly what happened. You were asked fair questions, and instead of answering, you melted down. And with that, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, turned and walked off the Loose Women set, leaving behind one of the most unforgettable live television moments in recent memory. So what do you think? Was Denise too harsh, or exactly as tough as she needed to be?